Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hormone Helper podcast. I'm Coach Andrew, your hormone helper from Fit for All Fitness. I personally coach over 1,600 men and women to help better understand their hormones so they can lose weight and get their metabolism back on track. With this podcast, you're going to hear from me and my special guests about everything from metabolism to thyroid to weight loss. And we even talk a little bit of sexy time as we chat to spread more knowledge, thick like butter, on your hormones. If you're ready to learn, I'm ready to share, so let's do this.
You know what I mean?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast today because we're going to be recording for my podcast and we're recording for Andrew's podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Because we were like, we had so many things kind of brimming out of this. First of all, it's literally Christmas Day, so happy
Podcast.
yeah, because like everyone is kind of we did some Christmas hosting today, so everyone is left. And we had such really good conversations over the past couple of days that we were like, all right, we have so much to unpack here that we should just unpack this in podcast form. So
Yeah.
I was like, why not? Let's do it.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys had an amazing holiday, Christmas, if that's something that you celebrate. And, you know, we were, of course, when you're with friends or family members, the topic of health typically tends to pop up, right? Whether people are talking about, you know, diets or, oh, you don't eat this, or why are you not eating that? Or, oh, you're gluten intolerant, or, oh, like whatever, right? Like there's always,
or even something like, somebody mentioning like, like in my case, I'm working on my knees, right? So like that comes up in conversation, right?
Yeah. Or even like we got a reverse osmosis water filtration system or whatever, and we're just telling our parents about it, we're telling our friends about it and things like that, and just things like that. Like, so like health comes up in conversation, and without going into too much detail, because obviously we want to respect people's privacy and whatnot, but over this weekend when we had Christmas get-togethers and whatnot, there was one person in our family that is going through some health challenges right now. And this other person, heard this person talk about how much they're struggling and, what they have to go through. And it's nothing like crazy dramatic, but like, they're going through some health issues. And this other person was just feeling like they felt for them. Like, I wish I could, like, I don't know what the right thing to say. Like, I know certain things that can help this person, but I don't want to like step on their toes, or I don't know if they're going to be receptive to hearing it. And this person was getting pretty emotional because when you see somebody who is struggling with their health, you of course want to do everything that you can to support them and to help them and to encourage them. But we were having this conversation where the person that is going through certain health issues or certain health concerns, they need to be the one ready to not only change, but they also have to be the ones willing to also like put in the work to make certain changes, right? And there's different steps involved, right? Like number one, you have to have awareness of what it is that you're going through, whether it's relationship with food, whether it's hormonal issues, bloating, digestion, unhealthy relationship with food, like whatever it is, like you have to have awareness over what it is that you're going through. And then the second thing is you have to be ready to make changes to improve your situation, right? Because the thing is, if you don't have awareness, then somebody can tell you, somebody can say something to you and it can either be triggering, or somebody can say something to you and you're not ready to hear it yet. And, then changes aren't going to be made. But also, if you have awareness, but then you're not willing to put in the work, your situation's also going to be the same, right? And so we were just having this conversation, and, it's like you need to be ready to hear the information in order to change, right? So I'll give an example, then you can always share your example. But a few years ago, when I used to struggle with my relationship with food, and people would always tell me, like, I would do these crazy restrictive diets, and I remember like even my mom asking, like, she's like, do you really have to like weigh out your food? Like, are you sure? Like, why can't you just like eat normally? And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like, other people can eat normally, but like, I can't. Like, I have to track my food. I have to weigh my food. Are you like, do you really have to go to the gym 7 days a week? I'm like, yes, like I have to. Like, when somebody told me to not track my food, I literally like laughed. I'm like, no, you don't get it. But now what do I do for a living? I literally help people stop, crazy obsessing over their food, right? But I wasn't at that point. I wasn't ready to hear that information, right? And so when you are ready to hear information, obviously you're listening to this podcast, whether it's you're listening to Andrew's podcast, you're listening to my podcast, you're ready to change, like you're ready to become the best version of yourself, and you're putting in the work and you are ready to make those changes, right? But for somebody, maybe you even have a family member or a friend where you are getting better, you are healing, you are improving your health, and maybe you have a family member or a friend who isn't maybe taking the best care of your health. And sometimes like you want to do everything that you can to tell this person like, hey, like you shouldn't be doing that, or like, hey, like you should be doing this instead. And it's like, it's so hard because you don't want to obviously trigger them or like step on their toes, but like, the incredible shifts and changes that you've made because you were at that time ready to make those changes, but not everyone is, not everyone's at that point. And sometimes it can feel sad or it can feel frustrating, but you can only, this is what I always say. It's like, you can do the best that you can. You can focus on your health, your healing, your happiness, and let people feel that, let people see that. Right. And then people will wonder, like, what the heck are you doing? Like, you seem so happy, or you seem so healthy, or you seem so strong, or whatever it is, because people might not be ready to hear that information. But as long as you're focusing on yourself and your health, and, that's really what you can do.
Mm-hmm. I think, another piece of this too is like, you cannot want something more than the other person wants it. And that's really hard, because I'm sure that people have a lot of friends and family members that you genuinely could help, but you're not the person to be giving that advice or to be giving them the help. And this is where, like, a lot of people have this, like with their parents, right? Like when your parent tells you to do something, there's like this really high level of unnatural resistance. You're like, don't tell me what to do. Like, you're not my boss, right? Like almost like you're 10 years old, but you'll hear the same type of advice from a financial planner, from an advisor, from a coach. And you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because most advice that comes from friends and family is what we consider internally biased emotional advice. We think that they're saying this to spite us. We think that they're saying this in some type of form of guilt because they want something. And because we live our life with these filters on, it's really hard for us to then, take that sometimes, which is why having that person that's completely external from those solutions, like a coach, is so important. Right. And another thing in terms of, working with somebody too, and I'll give you an example in my life. Like, I remember the very first business coach that we ever hired when we were at the studio.
That wasn't my first one.
Wasn't your first one, but it was like, well,
one that we shared. Yeah.
Like okay, one that we shared, right? Yep. And I would say the first 6 months of operating that business, like I just tried a bunch of stuff that didn't work. Like I was doing things, I was taking action, but the action was really random. I was making random changes. I was doing random stuff. I was making all this small stuff. And even a few friends were like, I don't really think that's the thing that you should be working on. And like, they were like, maybe you should consult with somebody on this. And I just kept doing random things, because ultimately, and I had this conversation with Lorna, like, I knew that the moment I worked with a coach, I actually had to make some changes that made me feel uncomfortable, which is why I didn't do it. Because at that moment, I was like, I'm not ready. And when I do hire this person, I want to be ready. Mm-hmm. And, kind of two things to that. One, I recognize now you'll never be 100% ready for anything, not for any type of changes you're making, not for your first kid, not for anything you do. You're never 100% ready. But the second thing is whenever you hire that professional, or you work with someone, or you make that decision to change, you must be all in and completely invested in that decision for yourself. You can't half in, half out that change. And that's typically why people keep doing random stuff, because internally there's this little piece that's like, well, I know the moment I start, I'm going to have to go and I'm going to have to adjust probably a lot more things. And that's a scary thought. That's really uncomfortable. But ultimately, you know, the big thing with this kind of person that we were sharing earlier is like, sometimes as a friend or a family member, or even colleagues at work, like, you risk not saying the thing that the person needs because you're scared of how they're going to feel in the moment. So we often choose as people temporary comfortability, so we then deal with long-term uncomfortability, where in the moment, we don't want to feel bad. In the moment, we want to feel good when we're eating food. In the moment, we want to feel good going out, having those drinks, doing those things. But it's the days, the weeks, and the months following that we feel that feeling of feeling bad. And this is where, like, me and Lorna as coaches, like, we know, like, that type of uncomfortability only gets worse when you prolong making choices, taking action, making decisions. And that's why, like, the people that are working with us, like, are in that spot where they're like, I have to change now. Like, I'm not gonna wait, because I know what happens when I've waited. I've waited before. I've waited that year and I've seen weight come up. I've waited that year and I haven't seen a change in my relationship with food. So it's at that point, it's like, you have to make that move at some point, and it has to be the right things. It can't just be random things of action that actually are not going to move the needle forward.
And that's the thing too, like, you can be taking quote unquote action, but if it's not the right type of action, you might actually be making things worse, right? Like, so for example, like, I used to do, I'm trying to do an example that would benefit both audiences. But whatever it is, like, if you, I can even use like intermittent fasting for an example, right? So for intermittent fasting, there's tons of benefits of intermittent fasting. But for somebody who is very, very, very stressed out and they have a poor relationship with food, it's not beneficial.
Yeah. Same thing if someone has high levels of stress.
Yes. Hormonal problem.
It's a physical stressor on the body. It's both.
So here I am thinking like, oh, I'm like putting in so much effort. Like I'm trying so hard. And like, it wasn't working for me because number one, I had a poor relationship with food, but also like my cortisol was like through the roof because of course you're thinking about every single calorie and like, is this good? Is this bad? You know, and sometimes you can be thinking that you're doing the right things, but it's not the right thing. It's like, even in terms of like, you know, foods that you're eating, right? Like if you're having like bloating or you're having like digestive issues, right? And you're like, oh, but like I eat super healthy. Like I'm not eating like, you know, foods that might upset my stomach, but even like quote unquote healthy foods cannot be like, could cause like digestive issues for your specific stomach, right? So it's like, this is why it's so important to like work with a professional and work with coaches, whether it's myself or Andrew, because you have a specific game plan that's custom to you. And you're not questioning like, you know, is this the right thing or is this not the right thing? It's like, you know what it is that you're doing. So you're not just taking random action.
You know what I'll say to this, you know what it is that you're doing? Truthfully, like 100% transparent, you are a self-led, grown-up, fully established human being who can carry a job. Like you are a self-led person. You know what you're not doing.
Yep.
9 times out of 10, you know what you're not doing. You also know what you're avoiding, and you're aware enough to know that maybe there's a few things that you're doing aren't working. Everyone knows this. Sometimes we pretend we want to go to the doctors and hopefully they say something else. So then we're like, oh, got it. It's that reason. But like 9 times out of 10, we all know what we are doing. And yet you have to ask yourself sometimes if it's in those moments where you're actively avoiding that thing, or you're tiptoeing around the next step just because of that fear. It's like you already know where you are in that moment. And there's a huge level of awareness, and awareness is good, like Lorna talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
But awareness isn't enough. And I think especially during this time of year, at least when we're filming, like the season of holidays, the season of New Year's, like it is a seasonal change. This gives people a lot of natural awareness where they start looking back, what did I do this year? What didn't I do this year? What do I want to accomplish? What is the next step? So a lot of times you're already shining light on some of the things that like you need to make those changes on. So it's like, why not act upon it? Because shining light on it just really doesn't do anything other than just visibility.
And another thing too, like even in conversation, what we recognize even like this weekend and stuff is, someone can say that, oh, I hate this about my body, or like, I don't like that I'm feeling this way, or like even for you guys right now, like whether it's like, oh, I hate that I'm out of control with food, or I hate that I'm having bloating issues, or whatever it is, right? And it's like, what action steps are you taking to better yourself? Because the thing is, sometimes when you have certain health issues or whatever it is, it's like, sometimes the hardest part is literally just getting started. Like the hardest part is like, I'm going to commit to do this, right? But once you get started and you start taking the right action and you start seeing how good you feel and how much better you feel in your own skin, or how much more energy you have, or the mental space in your mind, like all these different things, when you start recognizing you can wake up and not feel bloated in the morning, like it's like, oh wow, look, I actually realize that I can do this. But it always is like that first initial step. So it's like asking yourself, like, am I taking action, but also am I taking the right steps? Because when you take that action and you're taking the right action, it's like you're going to start feeling so good. And then the goals that you have for yourself is actually going to seem like it's possible for you. It's going to feel so much closer. But you can't be complaining that, oh, like I ate so much, or like I'm bloated all the time, or like I feel disgusting, or whatever it is, if you're not actually actively doing things about that, like that's so important, right?
Yeah.
And it's not to beat yourself up and be like, oh, like, look how I'm feeling, like this sucks. It's not that. Like you guys are amazing human beings where you're like, you know what, I'm feeling this way, but you know what, I'm going to make a change. Like I'm ready for that. And like, those are the people that see the most transformative results, because they're willing to take action to make those changes. And it should be exciting. Like, of course you guys want to feel your best, like physically, mentally, emotionally. Like you want to feel your best every single day, like it's not like a one destination where you just like get there and you've arrived. Like even Andrew and I, we're always working on our health. We're always doing things to improve our health.
Yeah,
and it's
I think
like,
people are surprised sometimes how much we were always doing things for us.
yeah, of course.
And sometimes they're asking like why, like for example, like what was wrong with your water? That's what people asked us originally when we made the change with the water, right? They were like, well, what's wrong with your water? It's not that there was anything quote unquote wrong, right? Like drinking water is better than not drinking water at all, right? But if we could find ways to step up and be even better, feel even better than we do now, why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Right. And just explaining to people just that different change, right?
Yeah.
Or even for a fact, like over the holidays, and this is just a choice for me and Lorna hasn't drank ever. Like you don't drink, right? And me, I have like maybe 2 beers over the holidays, right? And people are like, oh, like how come you don't drink? Like is it a digestive thing, or do you just know whatever? And I'm like, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
That's it. And you know what? Typically, most alcohol is really inflammatory. So if it's not for me to begin with, and I don't need it, and then in combination, I know the effects of what, possibly it could be. I know that if someone's like, well, how come you're not drinking? I don't need to force myself to do that. And that's actually not a step for me that I have to actually actively look at, and
no, I was just gonna say, like a huge thing I think of just like this whole conversation is like also like being an advocate for yourself, of like, if things aren't feeling well for you, you can make a change. But also it's like, so there's that, but also it's like, you also don't have to explain yourself to anyone. Like, I think there's also that, right? Like, this person that we were speaking to, that was having these health issues, right? Like, she was explaining to everyone, like, why she wasn't eating certain foods, or like, why she couldn't have this person's dessert, and why she, whatever, right?
But you used to do that too.
Yes.
You used to feel like you had to explain yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I felt like I needed to explain myself because I was like triggered in those situations, right? Like, and I just felt like nobody would understand. Or also, it's like, when you are like, for me, I was so like, am I allowed to eat this? Should I eat this? Can I eat this? And I was so up in my head that the last thing I would want is for somebody to ask me, like, why are you not eating that? Because maybe I did want to eat it and I was like too scared to eat it, or I would eat it, but I would be like terrified that somebody would make a comment, and then somebody would make a comment. And it's like, it's to like justify why you are eating certain foods or you're not eating certain foods. Sometimes it can feel so exhausting. But one of my family members brought up a good point, and they said, well, sometimes it's good to bring up the issues that you're going through, because then other people can understand. So like, for example, like this one person wasn't able to have gluten, right? And so people were asking like, oh, like, why are you not eating that? And it's like, oh, like I have an autoimmune issue and like I'm not able to have like gluten or whatever, right? And so like, obviously like that makes it easier for people to understand, of like, oh, okay, that makes sense, like just for people to understand. But you don't have to, like, you can if it feels good for you, but you also don't have to explain yourself. It's just, again, it's really just deciding what feels best for you, whether you rather just tell people so they don't ask a million questions, or like, why are you not eating this? Like, you can just forwardly say it. But also, if you're like, I don't even want to talk about it, like I'm just not having it, like you are more than welcome to do that as well too.
Yeah, I think the most important thing in a situation like that is to not come from a place of lack where you feel like someone is owed an explanation or owed an answer, or you have to give someone information just so you feel comfortable. Like that's not it, right? And
yeah, and sometimes people just ask out of genuine curiosity, like, oh, just curious, like, why are you not drinking, or like, why are you not eating this? Like, sometimes people aren't, I think I used to believe people would ask questions because they were judging me.
Yeah.
And the reality is sometimes people are not judging you. Like, they are like genuinely just curious and interested in why you aren't eating this, or why you're eating more of this. Like, people are just kind of like genuinely curious. And like, I think when you judge yourself less, it's so much easier to believe that people aren't judging you. Right. For sure.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, like this, conversations like this are so intriguing. I really feel like the holidays and even family gatherings or events with other people are you get to see mirrors. And what I mean by mirrors is people will either reflect the things that you say back at you, which is a very, very big learning experience, or you get to see through who people really are. And the longer that you talk with people and the longer that they open up and they share things, like, it gives you the opportunity to learn, like, you see other people's triggers when they're talking, when they're having, issues of their own. You also see how people respond to triggers, right? Like, our one family member who like cares a lot and was like, I just really wish that I could help, right? Things like that, like challenges with your health, expose more of who you already are. If you're the type of person who's gonna succeed no matter what, if you're that type of person who's like, you know what, I'm not going to accept how I feel as normal, I'm not going to accept this as the status quo, I'm going to do something every day to work on it, well, then your health is going to get better. And the challenges that you're experiencing are going to become less or might go away. Right.
Well, good example for Andrew and I, like, we're healthy people. And what I mean by that, I don't mean like, oh, we eat chicken and broccoli all day. Like, don't confuse that. What I mean by healthy is like, we feel good. We have energy. Like, we take good care of ourselves. Right. But we don't want to just feel good. Like, we want to feel the best that we can. So like, every single day we're like doing things to like improve our health, or, you know, we're learning information. We're just doing the best that we can because we don't want to just be good. You know, like you get blood work done and it's like, oh, you're in range. It's like, okay, great. But like, how can I feel even better? You know, and like people like that just really want to become like the best version of themselves. Like they're always going to be resilient and come out on the other side. Doesn't mean that Andrew and I don't have, you know, health challenges, or we haven't had health challenges in the past, but it's like because of the mindset of like, I am going to be the best that I can. Like I'm going to be the healthiest person. I'm going to take really good care of myself. It's like, we don't just settle for like, okay, or like things are good. It's like, I don't want to feel good. I want to feel amazing. I don't want to have good health. I want to have great health. And like, that's also something important as well too, right? Like things don't have to be at rock bottom for you to take really good care of yourself. And also things don't have to be like, things don't have to just like not be good for you to take care of yourself as well too.
Yeah. I think people take action, and it's not at rock bottom. People take action when they have a level of frustration great enough to make them move.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why sometimes, like one of the most interesting things that I learned was someone to say like feel like you're stuck, like get angry about it, even if it's for like 30 seconds. Why? Because like if we think about it, anytime we're looking like from an emotional perspective, right? Like sad, feeling anxious, you know, really kind of like low states of depression, or even like apathetic, you're like, I actually don't really care, like I don't feel anything at all. Those register so low, you actually can't take action in that range, because your body doesn't have enough momentum, it doesn't have enough energy. So like anger is it goes frustration, it goes anger, it goes then at that point like determination is a form of anger, but that's channeled in a really great way, you know. And this is sometimes like you have to almost get yourself into a different emotional state. But I think where everybody initially takes that change is where they like put their foot down and they go like, screw this, like like I'm better than this, like I don't deserve the way I feel. I can feel totally better. Like this is not me, and who I am is on the other side. This is where now I have to take that chance and make the change.
And that's coming from an empowered place.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. We're not talking like the people that come to us are like even if you are feeling at rock bottom, but it's like, I'm ready to make that change. Like, I know I deserve better. I'm ready to be the best mom. I want to have more energy. Like, I want to feel good. I want to be there for my kids. Like, there's that empowerment versus like, oh, I feel like shit. Yeah. Like nothing's going to work. Like, yeah, I've been like this for 25 years. So like nothing's gonna, like that. No, like we're not here for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's you got to recognize like, it is okay to not feel good of where you're at. That's okay. But you're the type of person that's like, I'm going to do something about it. And I know I know I can feel better. I know that there's support available. Like I'm going to make those changes. Like, you know, like it's from an empowering place of like, I want to take charge of my health. And that literally you succeed, because when it's from an empowering place of I'm excited to change, I'm ready to change, like you become unstoppable and you look forward to seeing those changes and to feeling better versus like, you know, being in that place of like, nothing's going to work. Well, of course nothing's going to work because you're telling yourself nothing's going to freaking work. So of course nothing's going to work. Like, you know,
I think one of the easiest ways to tell if you are in an empowered space, at least for most of the people that we speak to on the day-to-day, is empowered people own the things they're not doing, and they own their mistakes very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I could like, for example, literally like had a conversation on the console, like where the woman and she was so honest about, she was like, I could tell you that like I don't know how to eat well. I do. I'm not doing some of this. Like I've fallen behind. I've put myself second. Like the ownership is not, it is something else to say, hey, you know what? Here's like, I know exactly what it is. And maybe I don't know why I'm not doing it. Maybe I don't know why it's not working, but here it is. And it's on me. And I completely own that.
Yep.
That shows a huge level of empowerment because you are the one, like anytime you take accountability, you take power back and you put it in your own pocket.
Yep.
When you say you are at the effect of someone else or something else.
Yep.
I'm at the effect of, maybe family members put out food and you're like, oh, I hate my aunt because every time my aunt puts out stuff, I eat it. I'm like, it's not really your aunt though, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that level of giving away your own power that leaves you feeling powerless in situations.
Yeah. Or even like, stress eating or like emotional eating. It's like, oh, like my job, like if it wasn't for this work project, like I literally wouldn't be eating bags of chips at night. And it's like, okay, but like also like, do you do that like other times? Or like, like you also don't want to be blaming. And again, work could be really stressful, right? But it's like, hey, like I chose to turn to food. Like it's like you said, it's owning that. Like I chose to turn to food tonight and I literally ate 2 bags of chips because you know what? I didn't know how to process my emotions. And even though I was very well aware of the fact that I was like really stressed and I didn't want to send out that email, I did it anyways. But like you own it, like that's way more empowering than like, oh, this freaking job. Like if it wasn't just for this job, like I wouldn't have eaten the chips. And it's like, I don't know,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
because what it does is it leaves you an out. And when you have an out, you will take any out that you have.
And you don't have to take accountability or like you don't have to be like, oh, you know what, like looking inwards, like I actually have to fix my relationship with food, or I got to stop the stress eating, or like whatever it is, you know what I mean? So, or like you have like bloating or like whatever, and you go to a restaurant and it's like, oh, why do these people invite me to this place? Like, but like you can always choose what you want to eat, like
yes,
right? Like there's so many things, right? So but I think we're gonna wrap up the episode here. It is Christmas. We're gonna spend some time just like chilling and watching a movie, probably.
Yeah, because why not?
I know, it's like, you know what? I'm like, let's put in a podcast episode because you just learn so much about like we just learned a lot this weekend, just being with friends and family and just like being in conversation. And if we can extract any lessons that we can and share them with you, we're obviously more than happy to do that. So hopefully this was helpful and this was insightful and you can take some golden nuggets and like really check in with yourself. Like, are you making empowered decisions? Are you taking action? Do you have awareness over what it is that you're going through? Like all of these things are so important and things to contemplate.
And then that ownership piece, right? You take an ownership of the stuff that's yours. Looking at that, and that might be something great to journal on coming into, coming into a couple of days of vacation if you want.
But, yeah. All right, you guys will have an amazing rest of your day. We hope you had the best Christmas ever if you celebrate. And whether you're listening to this, in the new year or not, regardless, there's, like I said, so many golden nuggets you can really take away from this episode. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening and have an amazing rest of your day.
Ciao.
Bye.
Well, it seems I'm all out of info juice for today. That's all for this episode. And thank you so much for listening. Please leave a raving review for me if you've learned something good, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're in the mood for some more great content and tools to get your hormones on track, why not check out our free Facebook group and the blog on our site? We do amazing weekly trainings in our group that me and my wife call Tea and Teachings that give good tips for anything hormones and metabolism related. It's also a great community where you get to share your goals and success with like-minded people just like you. I'll make sure to drop both the Facebook group link and the blog link in the show notes for you. Or if you're ambitious like me, the name of the group is Weight Loss and Balanced Hormones. It'll say Fit for All beside it with a picture of me. So come and join us and have more fun.